everyone, like the old Motown song, where the IT jobs are. You're watching Techstrong, gang. Hey everyone, happy Monday. Alan Schimmel here from Techstrong, and wow, what a weekend. I hope you guys had a great weekend. I had a great weekend. Got to enjoy some of that South Florida weather a little bit. Saw a good movie. We could talk about it, but you probably don't want to hear. What you do want to hear about is what we got to talk about today. And I mentioned we're going to talk about where are the IT jobs. We talk a little about SoftBank and open source LLMs and cybersecurity. Oh my. Let me introduce you to our gang on this fine Monday morning. First of all, he's the newest member of our gang, really. He's genuinely from Austin, Texas. He's a good friend of ours. He can tell you more about himself, but some people call him R2, R squared, Big Lebowski, though he's not wearing his sweater today. My friend Robert Reeves. Hey Robert, how are you, man? It's good to see you.
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's getting a little warm for the sweater. And yeah, just super excited to be here. I'm always passionate about developers, open source, and creating jobs through startups. Those are the three things that I care the most about.
Good for you. And I know that firsthand. Welcome. Moving on from Robert, I feel like I just introduced her, but that was probably that webinar roundtable we did yesterday, right? Or last week, actually, my time goes. She is the CEO of Deploy Hub, open source defender extraordinaire, board foundation member on several. Our friend Tracy Ragan. Hey, Tracy, it's great to have you on.
You as well, Alan. This is going to be a fun one. We have Robert here.
Yes, he'll keep it moving. And then finally moving up to upstate New York, where he's still waiting for the Yankee season to start. He's our Chief Content Officer, Mike Rizard. Hey, Mike, just a few more days.
Approximately 80 hours, but who's counting?
Yep. Who's counting? All right. Guys, let's kick this fine Monday off with a recent article. It was over in Techstrong ITSM about mixed signals on the tech role or tech job front. I have a lot of friends who, for the first time in their lives, are not finding easy pickings getting new jobs. I probably had 3 or 4 people write me last week alone if I knew of any roles open. Good people too. Mike, what's going on here?
All right, well, let me set this up a little bit. So CompTIA, which is this industry association, does this regular analysis of statistics provided by the Department of Labor related to IT jobs. Now, it's the Department of Labor, and we all know that, well, there could be some given those numbers, but they're showing that there's an uptick in jobs of about 177,000. Not all of them are in big tech, though. And so that came out. And at the same time, Washington Post has an article noting that those same statistics, which suggest that 25% of all programmer jobs have disappeared, but they made a distinction between programmers and developers. And programmers are people who code, and developers are people who actually create applications. Robert, I know you've looked at all these stories, and I know you've been close to this topic for a while, but what the heck's going on here?
Well, thank you, Mike. I mean, look, that Washington Post article about the distinction between programmers and developers, there was a little bit of clickbaitiness to that title, certainly saying that, is this the first bit of evidence we have that AI is destroying computer programmer jobs? And yes, there was a dip. But one of the things that really jumped out at me in the article was that, I guess, paragraph 6 or 7, it starts talking about the advancements prior to AI around DevOps, cloud native, open source. These are things that, certainly Tracy, Alan, and I are at fault for. because this increased productivity for everyone in software. I think that it is way too early to start doing the chicken little sky is falling stuff about AI. I'm reminded of the story in Willy Wonka, the new one, not the original, about Charlie's dad loses his job at the toothpaste factory because he was putting caps on tubes of toothpaste. Of course, you fast forward to the end. Unfortunately, I'm doing a spoiler here. I hope you've seen it, where he gets a job repairing the machine that puts the cap on toothpaste. I do think that there is going to be a massive shift in how we build software, and we really don't know where this is going. The good news is that we've seen these massive shifts before, whether it was virtualized machines, containers, DevOps, and now certainly with AI. We have an opportunity as an industry and also as individuals to improve our skill set. But we are still, our more technical minded folks, our programmers, are still going to have a place to be. It's just companies right now, after a massive hiring boom during COVID, is just correcting right now. And also with some economic uncertainty, macroeconomic challenges, companies are just tapping the brakes. I think that's all it is.
I don't know. Alan, jump in here for a minute, but I will add one thing besides that. I mean, I just think a lot of folks are also getting better at copying and pasting stuff so that they're not actually typing.
So, let's peel this back, the news here, and you see it running on your ticker. What does it actually mean? Well, IT employment grew by 177,000. That means jobs that have sort of an IT title. Could be programmer, sysadmin, help desk, whatever, a network administrator. It could be anything related to IT. And overwhelmingly, it's probably IT in every industry under the sun, from healthcare to finance and banking to manufacturing to newspapers and media and everything else. It's not necessarily tech sector jobs, but they're tech jobs. Tech sector jobs. So the tech community, the tech companies, right? The kinds of companies that sponsor Techstrong events, the kinds of companies that make the solutions you out here watching this use, those companies had 11,000 and change fewer new jobs hired in February. So the tech center, the tech sector, the tech industry is hiring less people. Tech jobs are increasing. So that's the dichotomy here, right? You like that word, dichotomy. Now, what does it mean though? Well, I'll tell you what it means. And I think Robert and Mike, you're both somewhat correct. But really what's going on here is the tech sector has been frozen by paralysis with analysis since almost the end of COVID. They did go on a drunken hiring spree during COVID. They way overhired. And then since then, they've way overfired, right? They've laid off, I forgot what the numbers are, but it's over 1 million, 2 million, whatever people. And it's not that the economy is bad, right? If you look at the economic sort of indicators, they've certainly gone down since a certain person got sworn in as president, but they're not terrible enough where we should see less jobs and stuff like this. But what we are dealing with is uncertainty. And I said it before, I'll say it again. Businesses don't thrive in uncertainty. If you have an uncertain economic climate, an uncertain political climate, an uncertain socioeconomic climate, people tend to freeze up. They tighten up. And that's what you're dealing with. People are not sure what to do.
Tracy, you read articles too where people are now quite literally denigrating the employees in big tech, especially out in the valley. They're saying they got lazy, they've been pampered, they're not really good employees, and that's why we're laying them off because they represent the bottom 10 or 15%. And yet, I think, to Alan's point, it kind of smells like a cover up for overhiring in the first place. But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, they're out there playing golf. That's a reflection of somebody, right? But when I talk to my open source community, which gives me kind of allows me to keep my thumb on the sort of the pulse of what's happening out there. People are struggling to find work right now. And what I'm seeing is a pivot in skills. So they may have done less hiring, but there are job openings out there that they can't fill because they're asking for skills that have not developed yet, especially around AI. They're looking for this perfect AI developer candidate, somebody who's had 5 years experience in LLMs, and it's unrealistic, right? And I've seen those job openings, and it makes me scratch my head and say, where are they going to find such a person? So while I know that we're going through a pivot in skills and there are less jobs out there, we are going to see more jobs opening up in these areas, but they're just going to have different skill sets. And the other thing that I'm seeing and hearing is it's so much harder to find work now because of the way hiring is done. AI bots, that try to match resumes, there's a lot of bias in them. They aren't necessarily, the human has been removed, right? The human factor has been removed out of the job hiring process. So we have a whole new world of how to find jobs, whole new world. It was so prevalent in the community that the outreach community of the Ortelius project has started a job seekers webinar program. The first thing we did is we had a individual to come in and teach us all how to update and brand ourselves in LinkedIn, because everybody's using LinkedIn profiles, and developers, they're not writers, they're not storytellers, so they struggle with being able to brand themselves. Our next webinar, we're going to cover, what companies look for. What are some of the tricks you can do in your resume to try to get a better match to the job opening to beat the bots? It's kind of a beat the bots webinar. So I think that there's two things happening. We're having a pivot in skills. People with maybe if we're writing in Rust is becoming popular now. You've been doing Python. Now they're going to be looking for Rust developers instead of Python developers. And there is a slowdown. No doubt there's a slowdown in hiring, but I think it's going to be temporary, even with the current administration, as cybersecurity becomes more important. And the private sector has to address this. The public sector's not. And I think that AI is going to create a whole new brand of developers. So we just have to wait, and we have to get skilled up in the meantime, so that we are doing smaller little projects. The Ortelius project, I'm really going to pitch to them that we should start building an LLM, even if we're not going to use it, just so they have some experience in doing it. So there's many things that we need to do as software developers or programmers to make ourselves more relevant, and that's just what we're going through.
I'm suspicious of one thing, though. Every Monday we publish a post called 5 Great DevOps Jobs Opportunities, right? And so I spend the weekend going through all those DevOps listings, and on average, there's like maybe 6,000 new listings every week related to a DevOps job. Now, some of those are duplicate because somebody updated it or reposted it, but there are thousands of these openings. And what I have noticed, though, is a lot of those openings are no longer in Northern California, but there's a lot more of them in other places, including Florida and Texas and even New York. And there's also a lot of job openings in places like Minnesota. And so maybe people actually have to go move somewhere that they're not in today because, well, that region is not hiring.
I think that's part of the problem, right? We've had a mass exodus out of San Francisco. It's too expensive to live there. So now we have developers moving to different places. I mean, Santa Fe, I wouldn't have thought this would be a developer. I thought it was where rich people went to retire, to be quite honest. And we have it's amazing the community that has come from California who has moved to Santa Fe, and many of them come from the tech business, and they're looking for remote work no matter where it's at. So we've gone through quite a shift. I really do believe that, and I think it's going to take some time to settle down. And you know what? The big tech companies have been holding on to cash for a very long time. Let's admit that.
Mhm. Well,
They haven't done hiring.
to your point, just last week I noticed there was a DevOps opening at Los Alamos National Lab. So there you go.
There you go. There you go.
Well, I will say this, whenever you have a shift in technology, you individuals can go and learn about that technology. And certainly, Tracy, having an LLM and Ortelius, I mean, I think that's great. Just giving the community an opportunity and seeing if it's going to provide value to the open source project. That's awesome. But I do want to caution people that are going to seek to look at where they are kind of missing skills. And I do think it's great to get familiar with maybe building some kind of predictive AI model. I'm working on one myself for sorting Lego bricks so that I can learn about this stuff. But when we're seeking to increase our skills, you are going to get more return for your investment by maximizing the things that you are already good at. And seeking to be the best in that area. If you are going from zero to passable with a skill, okay, that's good, but it's going to be very hard to become an expert in that area. I think that you're going to have a greater advantage by investing in areas that you're already an expert on and seeing how those skills can apply to things like AI. But remember, in both of these articles, we did see soft skills. Being able to speak, have conversations, those sorts of things are going to be very important, have always been important. And especially where there's more competition for jobs, being able to have a personal connection with companies that you're connecting with, leveraging LinkedIn, learning how to do that. That is a skill set that is far easier to master than, say, building your own Gen AI model.
Yeah, in fact, in that point, one of the employers we talked to before we started the series said that out of 800 people that they hired, only 10% of them came from, somebody submitting a resume, kind of a hire. The rest were from networking.
Yeah, no, I'm seeing a
90%.
lot of that. And that's what people, I will tell you, last week, as I mentioned earlier, I think, I had 4 or 5 people reach out to me, friends, good people, who said, hey, one was been out of work since the first of the year, one just recently, one's still employed but looking to move along. But basically, they're not getting the calls from the recruiters like they used to. And they're not just popping in with jobs. They're, do you know anyone hiring in this? Especially, I will tell you, in DevRel, right? DevRel has been
DevRel's
decimated.
been hit hard. Yeah, it
Decimated.
has.
Decimated.
Yeah. Yeah.
But let me just say one other thing. How many people have lost their job because of AI? Anybody?
I have a hard time
Me too.
thinking of
Me too.
an
So
individual.
I think people using that as a crutch.
For real, or because somebody wrote that in a press release? Because there's a difference.
Well, I meant for real,
Exactly.
right? How many
I don't
people
know
have
of any
lost their job
individuals.
because of AI? Nonsense.
In fact, one of our kind of junior contributors, he's been with us for 3 years, but he started when he first started university. His first job was in AI. So it created a job for him right out of school.
I don't know. You know what I noticed over the years too? It's like, people are getting hired because they go to a conference and they'll sit around at a table and they meet a couple of folks, and that's how they network. And there always seemed to be like a lot of cross recruiting going on in any of these conferences I ever went to, including all the ones from the CNCF. And it seems to me, if you need a job, the place to go is any of those conferences in person is a good place to start.
And in the universities in India, they really push their IT students to join an open source project, because they tell them it's a good way to get real life skills. You've got to work with a team. You're going to network with companies. Some of these projects are led by the likes of Microsoft and IBM, who have people in there. If you want to network from India with a US company, the best way to do that is to join an open source project and start becoming known, right? And I don't see that coming from, we hardly ever see students coming from US universities. Never, ever. They're not there. And we always have a steady stream of students coming out of India who want to get involved.
Interesting stuff. Hey, we got to take a break here on the gang. Let's come back and we'll move over to our B block today, which is SoftBank scoops up a company. I hope that didn't come out of the reserve they set aside to invest here in AI data centers. You're watching Techstrong, gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Hey folks, we're back, and yes, there's a company called Ampere Computing they acquired for $6.5 billion. Maybe chump change in the age of AI, I don't know, but we don't know whether SoftBank, who acquired these folks, is doing that as to meet their commitment to the US or if it's part of some larger plan. But Tracy, when I looked at it, the first thing that did pop into my mind was, holy crap, we want a contract with the US government. Now we got to actually do something about it. And so here's Ampere. But what's your take?
So we all know that, chips are a big deal right now. And having more technology and more IP in the US around chip manufacturing is critical. We've talked about this before. It can't be all centered in Taiwan. I'm super excited about this story, though, not because of the chips. And the reason why I pushed to get this one is because this company was founded by Renee James, who I've been watching for a time. She is a middle-aged woman who started this company not very long ago, and she took it to $6.5 billion. Can we have a dance or something? That's,
You know what?
I'm
A
sorry,
day
it
too
makes
late
me
for
so
International
excited.
Women's Day, but you know what? You're
Oh
right,
my God.
Tracy. That's fantastic. What a great story. I wasn't aware of this at all.
This, to me, this has, made this story so important. It really did. Because we have so many women-founded companies who just women-founded, who are turning into unicorns. So few. And this is a great story about how she did that. And she did it at a very important time. And yes, we do need chips that are going to be more sustainable and that can be more, I guess you could say, energy friendly. So yay. I am so happy about this story. And, Renee James, thank you. Thank you for leading the way and showing women how to do it, and that you don't have to be a young woman out of school who's on potentially a team of founders that is still led by a male counterpart. So to me, this is the big story, is that a woman took this business to this level in the amount of time that she did. And I hope that she gets more attention around it.
Great story, man. I will say, good for middle-aged people anyway. It's not just
Anyway,
younger,
yes,
you
I
youngins
know.
out there.
But a middle-aged woman, last year, 1% of funding went to women in VC. Funding went to women. 1%. 99% is going to men. 1% is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But she proves that a woman is worth being investing in, right?
Well, I hope after this exit, she takes some of her winnings and starts a venture capital fund and corrects that. I can imagine no better person to invest in startups and hardware than her. As an operator and as a founder, she knows what it takes to build and grow companies. And I hope that that's what happens next.
I'm a little concerned that the cost of startups in the age of AI is going to be prohibitively high. And so there might not be as many startups because, you're going to see companies now require $2 billion is the ante just to get started. I mean, how?
Well, that's if they're looking to create their own LLM or models and so forth, training. You know what, Mike? That's frankly an argument I heard when the web first came out, when the cloud first came out, and it's always that high barrier to entry. And the high barrier to entry is always either advanced technology or advanced funding, one or the other, right? But on the other hand, no VC wants to invest in a company that anyone can duplicate. So they do want high barriers to entry. But let me mention something, and I'm not going to get on my soapbox here. But unfortunately, at least here in our country, the idea of pointing out that this is a woman who did this is just not in style in some circles in this country. And more than not in style, we're actually erasing women and other minorities from the history as contained on the web and maintained by this government. And that's a sin. That's a sin. And it's a sin that our children are going to pay the price, including the women out there and the minority people. I get that you don't want to make it easier for just certain groups or whatever. But when you start erasing the history and don't call out the wins that people have, you're no better than Hitler in 1932 and the Nazis. You don't do that. The winners don't get to write the history on the web. There is only one history. And it's wrong that we're doing that in this country, and it has to stop. And if it means having alternate websites and everything else where we call out the truth of women and minorities who have done great things in this country, we need to do that. And I'll leave it at that.
I want to get Renee on Techstrong Women. Wouldn't that be awesome? I know. It's like, how do I find her? I'm going to reach out to her on LinkedIn. I don't know if that's going to work. But now she's got some time. That was a cash offer.
We'll just send her this episode and consider it an invitation.
$6.5 billion cash offer.
Well, but you don't know how much did she give up, right? I mean, Robert, you've been through this as a founder, right? Out of that 6.5. I mean, I'm going to imagine if she's a typical founder and she went through 3 rounds or 4 rounds, she probably owns 10%, 12%.
Oh yeah, that's terrible. What is she going to do with 650 million? I mean, poor thing.
Hey, it's not like the Wiz guys who, by my reckoning, each walked away with about 8 billion.
Hey, look, I really feel for them. They really, how are they going to survive?
Exactly.
But look, it is the most important thing. Look, and Tracy will say this as well. You don't start companies to make money. It's actually the worst way to make money is starting companies. You start companies because you're passionate about it, because you feel strongly about it. And speaking for myself, it was Butthole Surfers had a song where one of the lines was, son, the funny thing about regret is it's better to regret something you have done than to regret something you haven't done. And for me, I really didn't want to look back and regret not starting that company. It's never about the money. Yeah, the money's nice, but it's really about changing the world and having an impact. And I think she has had an amazing impact and has dramatically changed the world. There is, certainly just as a CEO and a leader, getting a company to this point and having an exit like this, outstanding. And that is worth far more than the money.
Fair enough. Let's see where it goes from here. All right, we're going to take a break. We're coming back to our last block for this lovely Monday morning. Open source LLMs and cybersecurity. I don't know, oxymoron maybe. You're watching Techstrong, gang.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hey folks, we're back and we're talking about Trend Micro, which made a move to open source its LLM that it built on top of the Meta LLM, and they trained this specifically for cybersecurity purposes. And their argument is that, well, if everybody's going to go build an LLM for a specific use case, we should just do one for cybersecurity that we can all share. And they're arguing it's a deep seek moment for cybersecurity. Alan, I know you've tracked this space for a long time, but what do you make of that argument?
Can you say me too? I mean, I just like, all right, good for you, Trend Micro. I think what they're really trying to get at, though, is that they're throwing in first. They'd like to see other cyber companies throw in. We'd like to see, maybe this is something like the Linux Foundation, OSSF, should really be taking charge of, right? Which is a cross-industry, single LLM for all things cyber. Because having it just be in this case, Trend Micro, or in another case, Palo Alto or whatever, having it by individual companies is just balkanization, right? And, my LLM's bigger than your LLM. But if we could do an LLM cross-industry managed by some sort of foundation, will it help? Maybe. I mean, it's going to do, the old saying, quality in is quality out, and not quality in is not quality out. Some people use a different word for not quality. But that being said, there's so much details in there. And quite frankly, good for Trend for doing this. I applaud them. But this is really something that needs to be taken up by more than a single vendor. It really screams for an OSSF kind of involvement.
All right. Robert, do we need another foundation? Come on, there's no shortage.
Well, all right. Hold on, Alan. Like, before you start congratulating Trend Micro, let's kind of get into that press release that they put out about this. First of all, this is not open source. The data is not open. It is free, but free as in beer. It is not free as in freedom. People cannot take this and improve this. You cannot look at how it was built and seek to change it for your uses. It's just free usage. This is shareware. The other thing is that look at the licensing. They call out explicitly in the press release, you cannot use this if you're building a competitive offering to anything that Trend Micro offers. This is the Llama license that Meta came out with. And so it is not open source. It is certainly free. But if you really look at what it's doing, they train this on Trend Micro data. And things that they have offered, like, okay, look for this on this compute instance, look for these things at the network. And so it is balkanized. This is very specific to Trend Micro. And honestly, I think that this is a strategy to do two things. One, certainly, yes, we're doing it too. But second, this is, it identified lots of issues. You need to fix it. Here, fix this with Trend Micro products. Now, I do applaud them with that. For a go-to-market strategy, brilliant, big fan. But if we're going to start saying it's open source, bullshit. It is not. Now, certainly, Alan, to your point about a foundation and those sorts of things, Right now, I don't think that there's an appetite for companies that would want to fund this. They want to have their walled garden. They want it balkanized. And certainly as for-profit organizations, they're going to do that. I think the answer to this is for certainly Linux Foundation, other foundations to build their own, to do it out in the open, to open source the data, to open source the model, to give updates, and then have people be able to inspect this and show the world what a true open source LLM is.
Amen. Amen, brother. I agree on all those points.
So, but here's the Trace. Let me just jump in, and Rob, let me jump in a second. I'm not going to call it the hypocrisy of it, but you worked at the Linux Foundation, and I'm not asking you to badmouth them or say anything out of school. No, but and Trace, you're involved in them. They're not going to do this project without someone kicking in some money to fund it. Where's that money coming from?
Hold on. But remember, all open source projects start from a developer scratching an itch. Eric Raymond, Cathedral on the Bazaar. So somewhere is a developer or group of developers that is saying, hey, I'm going to build this. Now, remember, I mentioned earlier my Lego sorter. I certainly intend to open source that because I've got a huge stack of Legos that I need to sort. And that is my itch. At some point, a group of developers, now whether they're backed by for-profit companies or they're doing this on their own, are going to build this. And I think two of the biggest successes in open source, we could talk about that itch to scratch. Now, first, Linus. Hey, I'm building a operating system for x86. Yeah. It's going to be free, not full, huge, big deal. We've all read his first announcement. He just wanted to build it. Another example of that is Kubernetes. Google saying, hey, we have built Borg, and we don't want to be in the container orchestration business. We want to be in the AdWords business and all their other lines of business. And so they open source that. And so
do you think they regret it?
I know. I mean, from GKS, they're making plenty of money off of that. And also the improvements that happened to Kubernetes that benefited Google Maps, Gmail, all this other stuff, where they can make money off of that and not just selling Kubernetes, which they are with GKS. They're doing fine. I don't think they regret it at all. I think that they think that it's a masterstroke. And I think that the rest of the industry would agree. Very appreciative of, I think AWS is very happy with all the billions that they're making off EKS. But at the end of the day, these itches to scratch can come from an individual just doing it for intellectual exercise, or from companies seeking to take kind of non-differentiated technology and having the whole industry work on that, and then they can work on the higher order value add stuff. This will happen.
That's the most compelling thing about this conversation, is that LLMs are rapidly becoming undifferentiated value. I mean, the difference between the one that Trend Micro puts together and 4 other companies put together is marginal. So economically, it's time to just pile in together.
And that's the point I was making, Robert. I was not calling out Trend Micro for an attaboy. You know what I mean? I think this is a Me Too thing. And yes, it's not truly open source, right? The LLM, it's shareware, it's a free to use, it's free as in beer, as you said. But it doesn't give you the ability to make it better, to add on, to modify. But I think if Trend Micro's heart is really in the right place here, the thing to do is put this LLM into a foundation and call on others to join in on it.
Well, why don't we just say, why don't we just say, okay, first of all, I want to just a couple of points here that were made. Number one, there's both Alan and Robert are right to some level. Open source projects many of them, most of the big ones, are now being driven and provided by big companies. I seldom go into any of the Linux Foundation's meetings where somebody has changed jobs and now the SIG or the open source project has to go through some kind of rigmarole to, get somebody else involved because they're being paid to work on those open source projects. Literally, Ortelius is probably one of the only ones that we have just driven this product by sheer open source contributors. The problem with Trend Micro and this particular new release that they're talking about is that it has no governance around it. And I do believe that if you're going to consume open source, you better consume some open source that has proper open source governance around it. It has a board, it has a community, and that's not what Trend Micro is doing. So I agree with Alan that it should be put into a proper open source, foundation, whether it be Apache, Eclipse, or a new foundation that covers LLMs, right? Which, however it works. And then the other problem I have with this is it's deceiving to say that it's a cybersecurity LLM, because cybersecurity has so many sides to it. And they're talking mainly about, what they do because it's based on their data. So endpoint security, network security, they do a level of threat intelligence, but it's not related to the software supply chain. So to call
but
it
is cloud security.
It is cloud security, but that's just one aspect of the cybersecurity
but it's
world.
a start, is all I'm saying. Guys, it's a start. It's not meant to be the end. It's the beginning.
It's a start, right? But it needs to have a better name because it can be deceiving to think that this thing's going to solve all cybersecurity problems, right? So I really feel like it should go into an open source community as well. Which one, I don't know, but it should have proper governance around it. And it should the licensing should be where you can actually use it and consume it and monetize it in a way that makes open source what it is.
All right. Well, hopefully this is the end at the beginning, and we'll see where we go from here, right?
Well, speaking of the end, this is the end of this Techstrong gang.
I got the last word again.
Yes, you did, Tracy. Hey, everyone, just a reminder, this is not the end of Techstrong TV today, though, because it's just the beginning, right? Techstrong Gang always leads off our full day of coverage on Techstrong TV. So we still have probably 2-3 hours worth of great content for you to watch. Stay tuned if you're watching this on our Techstrong TV network. If you're just watching this on demand on YouTube or Techstrong.tv or one of our websites, do head over to Techstrong.tv or log in every morning at 9:30 on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube or any of our sites, and you can catch the whole stream. Or you could go to Techstrong.tv and just click on the individual segments that you're interested in. Anyway, Robert, Tracy, Mike, thanks for joining today. Thank you for watching. This is Alan Schimmel. This is another episode of Techstrong Gang. We're out of here.